This story proved to me that even the closest people can betray, and the most painful thing is that I let it happen. You will definitely be shocked how the whole situation twisted out at the end of this story. I never once doubted Lena, not when she started working late more often, not when she began turning her phone screen down on the table, or locking herself in the bathroom for calls she claimed were just work emergencies. I didn't even doubt her when she started pulling away in bed, or when she claimed she was just tired lately. I believed her, every damn word. And my brother, Trevor, the kid I pulled out of his own grave, I'd have bet my last breath he'd never cross me. I carried him through rehab, signed the goddamn papers when nobody else would. When he had nowhere to go, I gave him our guest room. When he needed a second chance, I handed him the keys to my life, my wife, my child, my trust. The day everything cracked open, it was supposed to be peaceful. I'd gone fishing early, hoping to clear my head after another one of Lena's cool silences the night before. I needed to remind myself that things could still feel simple, that the water, the wind, the line tugging under my fingers still meant something. By late afternoon, the sun was dipping down, and I pulled into the driveway, expecting the usual scene. My little girl coloring on the living room floor, Lena humming in the kitchen, the scent of rosemary chicken maybe, the kind of day you bottle because you don't want it to slip through. But something was off the second I walked in. The house was too still, too quiet, no cartoons playing, no pans clinking, no footsteps overhead. I called out once, nothing. Maybe they were out. Maybe they'd gone for ice cream. I went upstairs thinking I'd grab a shower before dinner. That's when I saw the projector light bleeding faintly from under the door of our bedroom. That thing should have been off. I always turned it off. It wasn't even supposed to be plugged in unless we were watching family movies. My gut twisted. I opened the door slow, not wanting to wake anyone if they were napping. The projector was playing something from my phone, a backup, one of those automatic cloud syncs I'd long forgotten. I stepped into the room and saw the screen, and there it was, my own bed, my own fucking bed. Lena, tangled in the sheets, Trevor's hand trailing across her back, her face buried in his chest like she belonged there. And the worst part wasn't even the sight of them. It was her voice, sharp and clear through the speakers, piercing through my ribs like a goddamn blade. He still doesn't know. He's too good for this world. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I didn't even cry. My fingers shook, sure, but I didn't stop. I saved the video to a flash drive, took a screenshot, then I shut everything off, left the room just as I found it. I walked out of my house, got into my truck, and drove without looking back. The hotel wasn't far, just 15 minutes across town, but it felt like crossing dimensions. I checked in without a bag. 3 nights. Cash. No questions. The next 72 hours were quiet on the outside, but inside it was a different story. Every second ticked by like a countdown to something I couldn't name yet. I didn't sleep. I watched the video on loop until I could replay every frame in my head, even when the screen was black. I didn't rage, I plotted. My whole life had just been flipped over like a chessboard, and I was already reaching for the first piece. I called a lawyer the morning of the 4th day. Not just any lawyer, one I knew from my time in construction deals, the kind who could tear apart contracts in his sleep and smell fraud like a bloodhound. I told him everything. By noon, we had the first draft of 3 legal statements: divorce, custody, and a temporary restraining order. By evening, I had a meeting scheduled with the bank. Because, see, I'd gone back to the house once. While they weren't home, I had a hunch, a bad one, the kind that doesn't let go. Lena had been asking strange questions about the house deed lately. At the time, I chalked it up to curiosity, but now it was something else. I opened my safe and saw that some papers were missing. Not the valuables, just the legal stuff. Titles, wills, power of attorney documents. I called in a private investigator the same night, a retired cop. The guy was discreet and knew how to dig where others wouldn't. He found something within 48 hours. Lena and Trevor were planning to move. Another state. New IDs. A fake power of attorney had been filed in my name with a forged signature that was good. Too good. They were trying to sell part of the house. My house. I took everything to the police, gave them the names, the evidence, the timeline, told them I suspected fraud, theft, and possibly conspiracy. They started digging deeper. I didn't know what they'd find, but I knew this much. It was no longer just betrayal. It was criminal. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. The law would crawl, and I needed something faster, something personal. So I planned a dinner, a fake reconciliation dinner. I texted Lena from a burner number, posed as a counselor, said David was willing to talk things out. She bit. Her parents were invited too. I made sure of it. I wanted an audience, and I had just the centerpiece in mind. There was a pressure in my chest the entire day, like I was walking into a storm I had built myself. Every detail of the dinner had to be exact. The lighting, the food, the candles Lena used to light on special occasions. It had to feel real, even to her. That was the only way the blade would cut deep enough. On the table, right in the center, I placed a small, elegant black box. No decoration, just a label on the lid in silver print. What remains when trust dies? Inside was a flash drive holding the video from the projector, her and Trevor in my bed. And under that, a stack of printed emails and message screenshots. They hadn't been discreet. They'd left a trail of filth behind them. Plans to meet in motels, jokes about me, always being too slow. Even discussions about what to do with the house once it's sold. It wasn't an affair. It was a blueprint for betrayal. They arrived just after sunset. Lena brought our daughter, smiling too wide, eyes darting around like she was afraid of what she might find. Her parents came too, her mother with forced cheerfulness, her father cold and stiff. I greeted them like nothing had changed. We sat, we talked. I let her believe for a moment that forgiveness was on the table. Then I told her I had a gift. She opened the box slowly. She saw the flash drive first, then the papers. Her hands started to shake. Her mother leaned over and started reading. Silence spread like oil across the room. Her father stared at the messages for a long time before looking her dead in the eyes and saying, "I don't know you anymore." That was it. He stood up and walked out. Her mother began to cry, head in her hands. Lena sat frozen, mouth half open, staring at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something less damning. I didn't speak. I walked our daughter upstairs, told her everything was okay, and returned to the wreckage below. Lena was still in her seat, her hands now gripping the edge of the table. I walked past her without a word. She didn't try to stop me. Later that night, while I was reviewing camera footage from the house, my phone rang. The private investigator I'd hired gave me the news. Trevor had been arrested. His car was found near the site of a break-in, my attorney's office, where paper backups of our legal documents were stored. Idiot thought he could clean up the loose ends, but he got caught, and when the cops leaned in, he cracked. Fast. He gave them everything. Told them Lena was the one who pushed the plan forward, handed over messages, call logs, proof of the forged power of attorney, claimed he was manipulated into it all. And so the next morning, Lena got her own invitation to a police interrogation. But I wasn't done yet. I made sure the detectives had more than just Trevor's word. I gave them recordings, voicemails where she told me I was unfit, tapes where she manipulated our daughter, whispering lies in her ear. "Your dad doesn't love us. He's cold." She made our daughter fear me. That was unforgivable. The noose around them was tightening now. The law was moving, slow but certain. Still, I didn't relax. I couldn't. There was more to uncover. I knew this wasn't just an impulsive affair. They'd plotted this for months, maybe longer. And if I hadn't found that video when I did, they would have sold my house, taken my daughter, and disappeared. But they didn't, because now they were drowning in what they built, and I was the one holding the tide. They tried to fight back. I expected panic, but I didn't expect how low she'd go. The moment Lena realized the evidence was real and that Trevor had turned on her, she stopped pretending. Her messages changed from desperate to vicious. I ignored them, but she didn't stop. The next morning, a knock on my door wasn't the police. It was a social worker sent to investigate a domestic violence report. Her accusation, filed under my name, using our daughter as a witness. I didn't flinch. I had been waiting for this exact play. Every room in the house had been fitted with cameras 2 weeks earlier, voice recorders in the common spaces, and one quietly hidden in the nursery. The footage told a very different story than whatever fantasy she'd scripted for the investigators. I handed everything over. Video files, audio clips, time-stamped logs. The social worker listened to one recording personally. Lena's voice, sharp and cold, cut through the speaker. "Say it, baby. Say, I'm afraid of Daddy." A pause, our daughter's voice trembling. "I'm afraid of Daddy." Then Lena again, soft and sickly sweet. "Good girl." I watched the woman's face go white as she replayed the clip. Her hand tightened on her clipboard. She didn't ask another question. I told her where the rest of the recordings were stored, and she left without another word. The next day, I was in court with my lawyer. We didn't go in smiling. We went in silent, determined. I kept my head down, hands clasped, like a man mourning the death of something sacred. The judge reviewed everything himself, not just the video, the voicemails, the emails, the recording from the nursery. He didn't say much, just asked questions. One of them hit harder than the others. "Do you believe your daughter is safe with her mother?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He had already made his decision. Full custody to me. No visitation, no contact. The court ordered immediate transfer of all parental rights and issued a temporary restraining order until the criminal charges against Lena were resolved. She wasn't in court that day. She didn't even show her face. Her lawyer tried to stall, file a continuance, beg for leniency. It didn't work. After that, things moved fast. The fraud charges started to stack. Trevor had given them enough to trigger a full financial audit, and once they dug into the forged power of attorney, they found traces of another forged document connected to Lena's workplace. She'd used a fake medical report to take extended leave last year, a signed doctor's note that didn't come from any real office. So I wrote a letter. Not out of revenge, out of principle. Lena worked for a global foundation that supported women in crisis. She was a lead counselor, responsible for mentoring survivors of psychological abuse. I sent the foundation a detailed account of her actions, evidence of her manipulation, the voice recordings with our child, and the court order granting me full custody. I attached copies of the charges she was now facing. I expected them to investigate quietly. Instead, they acted in less than 48 hours. Lena was fired immediately, her email account deleted, her professional profile wiped. The foundation issued a public statement about revisiting internal vetting procedures. But it didn't stop there. Her name began circulating through legal blogs, mental health boards. Someone posted a transcript from the custody hearing. Then someone else linked it to the audio leak. Within a week, Lena's name was trending on local forums under the search term, parental abuse. She had no job, no custody, no credibility. Still, I didn't celebrate, not yet, because even as her world started falling apart, I knew there were pieces of mine still at risk, fragments of innocence I had to protect. Our daughter was quiet these days, careful, like she didn't trust Joy anymore. She didn't understand why her mother was gone, and I couldn't tell her everything. I just held her tighter every night, told her the monsters were gone. But part of me knew that wasn't true. Not all of them. Because one of them, my own brother, was still out there. Out on bail, waiting for his court date, and he hadn't stopped talking. A letter arrived at the house that week. No return address. Just my name. Inside a note. Just 5 words scribbled in sharp, angry ink. "You think this is over?" I held it in my hand for a long time. Number. It wasn't over yet. I kept the note locked in my desk drawer, next to the flash drive that started it all. It sat there like a ticking heart, daring me to open it again and let the rage crawl back up my spine. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what Trevor was trying to do. Poke the bear, stir up the storm, maybe even bait me into doing something reckless. But I wasn't going to swing blindly. I was going to finish this the right way. Slow, cold, permanent. The week after the letter, something else shifted. The police finally looped me into a break in the stolen documents case. They had recovered one of the missing files, my original power of attorney. It had been found in the glove box of a burned-out vehicle abandoned on the edge of the industrial district. The car was registered to Trevor under a fake name he used during his relapse years ago. The registration was old, but it was enough. They brought him in again. This time the tone had changed. The officers weren't questioning, they were closing in. And that's when Trevor folded for good. He turned Lena in completely. No more hedging. He gave them exact dates, locations, how she planned to fake my signature using samples from old tax documents. He admitted that Lena had accessed my cloud storage without my knowledge, pulled old images of my signature, and traced them onto legal paperwork. But here's where it all twisted. In his confession, Trevor tried to push the narrative that he had been a victim too. Said Lena had manipulated him, convinced him to help her get out of a loveless marriage and start over. Claimed she used sex, guilt, and promises of family. Even claimed she hinted that the child might be better off with him as a father. That part, right there, was what snapped something inside me. Because now he wasn't just my brother, he was trying to rewrite the story of my daughter's life. I handed over the last batch of evidence I'd been holding on to. Audio files pulled from the old baby monitor. I had almost forgotten I still had it plugged in. But deep in the saved archive were recordings of Lena whispering things to Trevor late at night. In the room next to ours, back when he was still living with us. Quiet conversations, full of venom. He's always gone. He doesn't look at me like you do. What if we just left, took her and vanished? They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd talked about erasing me. The detectives added these to the file. The fraud case was solidifying. But now the Child Welfare Department was re-engaged. They opened a criminal inquiry into emotional abuse. Another layer of hell Lena would now have to climb through. Then came the day of her interrogation. I wasn't there, but the detective gave me the summary. Lena denied everything, at first, said the recordings were fabricated, that Trevor was lying to hurt her, that I was setting her up out of spite. But then they showed her the video from the nursery. Not the edited version, raw feed, full sound, her voice, her words, her face crumpled. She broke. Still, she didn't cry. She got angry, said I had driven her to this, that I made her feel like a prisoner, that I loved the house more than her. All of it was noise, deflection. The detective said her voice cracked when she talked about our daughter, though. That was the one thing she didn't try to spin, because deep down, even she knew she'd crossed a line she could never walk back from. That same night, I got another call, this one from Lena's lawyer. They wanted to negotiate terms. I didn't respond. I sent them a one-line email. All communication goes through my attorney. We're done. But the next blow didn't come from her. It came from the house. I was reviewing old footage again. Routine by now, just checking dates, logs, making sure nothing else had slipped through. That's when I saw it. A shadow in the footage from 2 weeks earlier. The side door, rarely used, opened just slightly, then shut. Quick, silent. I pulled the logs. There was no alarm trigger, no camera motion alert, just a flicker of movement and then darkness. I stared at it for hours. That door led to the garage where I kept storage bins, old photos, tax documents, things Lena would have known were valuable. I went down there myself, turned everything upside down, and that's when I noticed the missing case. One of the bins that held my original tax records, the ones with my signature samples, was gone. She hadn't just found them in my email. She'd been inside. After I left the house. After I gave her the benefit of doubt, thinking I could still find a clean way to end things. She had walked through the home like a thief and stolen more than memories. She'd taken the very pieces of me she needed to forge the life she wanted without me. And if that hadn't scared me, what I found next did. Inside another bin, tucked behind files I hadn't touched in years, was a small notebook. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even hidden well. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Trevor's. Pages of scribbled notes, half sentences, fragments of a plan. Words like custody leverage, change address before court, get her to say it. He hadn't just been helping her. He'd been planning his own version of fatherhood. Whatever pity I had left for either of them was gone. The wolves had circled my home, wearing family skin. By now, the storm had spread far beyond our walls. I couldn't go into town without seeing it in someone's eyes. The confusion, the discomfort, the gossip they wouldn't dare say out loud. Lena's name was everywhere. tied to abuse claims, a custody scandal, fraud. The stories twisted in the mouths of strangers, half true at best. But I didn't care what they thought. They didn't matter. Only my daughter did. Her safety, her peace. I built our days around structure, school, dinner, bedtime, all clockwork, all quiet. But I could feel it beneath the silence. Lena wasn't finished, not even close. The judge had made it clear, full custody to me, no visitation, no contact. Still, she filed an appeal within days. A fresh stack of accusations, domestic violence, psychological abuse, coercion. She even included a sworn statement from a therapist backing her claims. But there was a problem. The therapist didn't exist. The letter was a fake, cut and pasted from an old counseling clinic that had shut down last year. Her signature was a forgery. I didn't blink. I'd been holding my counterpunch. We dropped new audio into the appeal file, clips of her talking to Trevor months before I knew, her voice light and smug. If he finds out, I'll just flip it on him. He's too careful. It's his weakness. And then, more chilling, if I get custody, we start over. You, me, and her. That recording shattered her appeal. The court denied it on the spot and opened a perjury review. The judge added a permanent no-contact order for both me and our daughter. Lena could no longer speak to us in any form, not by mail, not through lawyers, not even on birthdays. One more attempt and she'd face jail. Still, she reached out. My daughter found the envelope tucked between junk mail, no stamp, just a hand-drawn card, a mother and daughter under a yellow sun. On the back, 6 words, "I'll come for you soon." I held the card for a long time before I shredded it. But she wasn't the only one unraveling. Lena's father showed up unannounced the next evening. He stood on the porch holding a box, said nothing for a while. Then, she left this in our attic. Inside were old photos, bits of junk, and one picture of me, torn down the center, the edges singed like she'd tried to burn it. He looked me in the eye, said, "I'm sorry," and walked off into the night without another word. Later, I checked the garage. One of my bins was missing, an old storage case with tax records, signature samples, things she could have used for her forged documents. I tore through everything and found another item buried deep behind the rest. A small spiral notebook. Not mine, not hers. Trevor's. Inside scribbled notes. Custody leverage. Get her to say it. Change address before court. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a campaign. A coordinated plan to wipe me out and rewrite the truth with them in the center. They hadn't just planned to take my life. They wanted to replace me. That realization changed everything. Because now I knew this was never about love or family. This was about control, about power, and even with charges, court orders, and public shame surrounding her, Lena still believed she could twist her way back in. But not anymore. My walls were sealed. My daughter was safe. And now I was preparing the last blow, one she wouldn't see coming until it was already too late. Lena's silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I knew her too well to believe she was finished. The quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like the breath before a punch. Weeks passed, no contact, no court moves, not even a whisper from her lawyer. It looked like she'd finally let go. But predators don't let go. They wait. And I wasn't about to stand still. Her career had taken a hit, but not the knockout I wanted. The organization that fired her had kept the dismissal quiet. No details, no statement. Her reputation still had oxygen. So I cut off the air. I found 5 major organizations she'd worked with, spoken for, or applied to. Sent them a single package. Inside, audio of her using our daughter to lie, transcripts of her forged appeal, screenshots of her messages to Trevor about flipping custody. A short letter labeled, "Pattern of Abuse, Verified Evidence." 2 days later, the responses rolled in. They were stunned. One called her a manipulator hiding behind advocacy. Another flagged her as a potential liability. They promised to block her from future events, pull her name from upcoming campaigns. Quietly, her last professional ties snapped. She didn't even know it yet, but Trevor did. He'd gone radio silent until I got a call from a rehab clinic, 3 states over. A nurse said Trevor had checked himself in and listed me as an emergency contact. Said he left a message. Tell him I'm sorry. She blamed him for everything, even what she caused. I deleted it without hesitation. I wasn't interested in his redemption arc. What mattered came the next day. A thin package arrived, no return address. Inside, a draft of a character reference, praising Lena's strength as a mother, written by a woman from Arizona I'd never heard of. Attached were documents, a rental agreement, a school enrollment form, both using my daughter's full name. No court stamps, no approval, just the setup for a lie. She hadn't submitted them yet, but she planned to. It was the start of something dangerous. I forwarded everything to the detective handling the forgery case. He confirmed what I suspected. Lena was laying groundwork, trying to create a paper trail, setting up a new story, maybe even planning to take my daughter and disappear. That night, I upgraded everything. New locks, better cameras, backups of every legal document. I wasn't just fighting for my child anymore. I was defending her future. My daughter asked about her mom the next morning, why she didn't call, why she missed another birthday. I told her gently, she's far away. She can't talk right now. She looked at me and asked, is she sad? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, she handed me a drawing. Us, standing in front of our house. One sentence beneath it, in shaky handwriting. No one can take us away. I hung it on the fridge, because that's the line Lena crossed without knowing it. She thought this was still about betrayal, about power. She didn't realize she'd touched something she could never control. What it means to fight for your child. And now I was done defending. It was time to make sure Lena would never get the chance to come back. 1 year. That's how long it had been since I saw Lena in person, since the court order, since the cameras caught her trying to twist our daughter's voice into a weapon, since Trevor sold her out to save himself. 12 months since the life I built collapsed, and I built it back with just my hands, my daughter's hand in mine, and no one else. We live quieter now, far from the chaos, in a small town tucked into the edge of Washington state, the kind of place where the air smelled like pine and the neighbors nodded without asking too many questions. Each morning I walked my daughter to school. Each night we ate dinner together at the same kitchen table Lena used to sit at, laughing over things I thought were real. But this home, the one we built after, was stronger. There was nothing fake left in these walls. I thought it was over. Then came the knock. I didn't flinch. After a year of peace, I knew how to recognize danger before it hit the door. But it wasn't Lena, or Trevor, or even a cop. It was the postman. Just a package. No markings, no sender. Light, thin. I took it inside, set it on the counter, and stared at it for a few seconds too long. Inside, a letter. Trevor's handwriting. Just his name on the top. No date, no address. But the words were exactly what I expected. Sniveling, manipulative, full of his signature half-apology. He wrote, I lost. I admit it. Said he was in rehab again. Said he hoped I could one day forgive him. But then the letter twisted. The next sentence made my chest go still. She's pregnant. From me. I read it again and again. My fingers didn't move. My breath didn't come. I stood there hearing my daughter in the other room humming to herself, and everything in my body went cold. She thinks you'll still break, he wrote. It was a final gamble, a last pathetic swing, and somewhere in their deranged, toxic fantasy, they believed it would crack me open. That this news that my brother had not only taken what mattered most to me, but tried to multiply it, would ruin what I'd rebuilt. I smiled, because I knew now exactly how the story ended. I folded the letter, walked to the fireplace, opened the iron grate, watched the flames breathe a little brighter with the rush of air, and without another thought, I tossed the paper in, watched it curl, blacken, and disappear. There was nothing left for them to take. Lena had destroyed her life in slow motion, tearing it down with every lie she told, every manipulation, every fake tear, every threat whispered into a child's ear. She dragged Trevor down with her, and now they were clinging to each other like rats on a sinking ship. But I was already on the shore. I walked back to the kitchen, where my daughter sat coloring, her hair falling over her face, her feet swinging above the floor. I sat next to her, pulled her close. She looked up and asked what the package was. Just junk mail, I said. And then I said something else. Not for her. For me. We're not letting anyone take our home away again. She nodded like she understood. And in that moment, I knew she did. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd burn. But I was still here, and they were already ashes. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.